We should acknowledge and thank him. He is a very important person, and he is very, very handsome. He is our master of ceremonies, Mr. Vikas. Let's give him a round of applause. I would also like to welcome our English language fellows. English language fellows are professional American teachers, and they go all over the world for one academic year. And they came all the way to Nepal. Some live in Nepal. And I would like to ask them to stand up. They are from Nepal, Sri Lanka, India, and Bhutan. They also write, yes. And we should also thank the staff member who came all the way from Washington, D.C. He's a staff member of the English Language Fellows Program. I see you right there, yes. Give him a round of applause. Yes, okay, thank you very much. Thank you. I would like to thank our very dear friends at Mahendra Ratna campus. They have done a really amazing job. They have exceeded my expectations, so I want to say thank you very much to all of them. I'm also extremely grateful to Kathmandu Engineering College. This is a really great facility, and we're very happy to be here this morning. And before I go, I would just like to salute one more person. And I want to salute this person because everything that we see around us, everything happening here today, was his original idea. And I remember how he convinced me in the regional English language office at the embassy to do this conference. And it took a tremendous amount of planning and work with Mahendra Ratna campus, but he's a great organizer, and we should really thank him. He is Mr. Bishwa Gautam. So thank you very much, and please enjoy the next 2 days.
To ask, may I go to Professor Bandari? So we, English language teachers, do we have a kind of hangover of structuralists? I use this term hangover of structuralists, that we hesitate to handle this course in classroom. And how other approaches of language teaching, communicative approaches, even you are very much familiar with CLEAN also. So how does it treat literature, and what is the present scenario? So may I request you to address this question.
We should first know what literature is. Generally, when we try to define literature, in the first, it can be anything written on the subject. So we say literature of any subject, and literature review we also say. So secondly, when we talk of literature, it can be literature genres like poetry, fiction, and drama. And thirdly, for many people, literature means poetry. Therefore, whether to teach literature, I find many people poetry in their mind. So, as Dr. Redmi introduced the issue, or he mentioned the hangover of structuralism, structuralist approach of language teaching. In fact, in Nepal, structuralism is partly seen here. Before structuralism, we had grammar translation method, and still we have a kind of blending of grammar translation method and structuralism. Though in theory we say communicative approach, and content and language integrated teaching, but I think they have yet to come to Nepal. In some language schools, they are there, but in colleges and schools, they are trying to enter, but not entered yet. This is what I feel. If you talk of old principles of latest methods, what they have learned in their training program, and they are using the traditional methods in the school or in the colleges, even in the universities. Therefore, this kind of mixing um, of methodologies is found in our schools and colleges. And if you go to language schools, or which I have, if not properly answered, at least I have touched your question.
We have Professor Jiblal Sapkota, and as Bandari did earlier, most of the language teachers, they think literature means poetry. Even in our observation, when we go to colleges or universities, even the students, they have the query, how can we read poetry, recite poetry? We know reciting poetry is the first thing, not at higher level, or university level, but at our 11th, 12th grade. That is very important. So, Professor Sapkota himself, he is a composer of metrical verses. So, our query is, when our students, for example, they listen to a piece of poem, for example, they say, Paduka Dan of Bhanubhakta, खुब सत्यवादी त पिताजी थिया साँच्चै हुनाले वरदान दिया सोपूर्ण गर्न कनजान्छु भनमा साँचो कुरा हो बुझिदेऊ भनमा I am minds to go before I sleep, I am minds to go before I sleep of Robert Frost. Do they enjoy differently while listening the verse in their mother tongue and in English? And the next query is, how can we, they always ask, how can we recite poems? So I would like to approach Professor Sapkota. Okay, this query, please.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Regmi. First, poetry is the oldest genre of literature. Poetry began with the beginning of human civilization. There was poetry when there was no written script. Our forefathers, though they didn't have any formal education, they could recite poems. Poetry was the medium of exchange up to neoclassical period. Even Alexander Pope wrote his 2 essays in poetic verse, Essay on Man and Essay on Criticism. These 2 essays are in verse form. Therefore, poetry flows from 2 of human beings. Because we like rhyme rhythm. Our heartbeat has its own rhythm. Our footstep has its own rhythm. Everything has its rhythm. Poetry is rhythmic. To understand poetry, first of all, one should know what are the different elements of poetry. There are 3 types of words game in poetry. First, metaphorical words game. Metaphorical words game are simile, metaphor, conceit, pun, synecdoche, zeugma, personification, language of animation. These are metaphorical words game. Another one, anti-metaphorical words game is the recognition of incongruity. Difference between what one says and what one does. Difference between what one seems and what one actually is. Difference between what one speaks and what the meaning actually is. That's called irony. Different types of irony you should know, or the reader learner should know. Another one is beyond metaphor and irony, that is imagery. There are 6 types of imagery. Audible imagery, let's say visual imagery, thermal imagery, tactile imagery, olfactory imagery, gustatory imagery, and then kinesthetic imagery. When learner knows these things, he or she can understand poetry. When you have the knowledge of poetry of Nepali language, that helps you to understand English poetry. Because in Nepali too, these metaphorical words game, anti-metaphorical words game, and imaginary words game are used. Therefore, to teach poetry, first of all, we have to make the reader understand we can say elements of poetry. So far as recitation is concerned, recitation belongs to prosody. Prosody has 5 elements. One is sound pattern, assonance, alliteration. Let's say then after these are repetition of vowel sound, repetition of consonant sounds that they have to know. Another one is pauses, where the punctuation marks are there, either in stop or in the middle or on lines. When there are no, we can say punctuation mark in the verse line, that run-on lines. When ideas are running, then run-on lines are there. Then after we know the rhyme scheme, in rhyme, alternate rhyme, masculine rhyme, feminine rhyme, multiple rhyme, I rhyme. Then we have to know foot. There are 4 types of foot in English: iambic foot, trochaic foot, and you. Thank you.
Now, I would like to go to Professor Paudel. We have the versions, for example, whether literature first or language first, right? So some versions, they claim literature is such a material that can very much effectively develop students' acquisition. And there is another version, no literature, when students, until and unless the students are very much familiar to grammar and vocabulary of target language, we should not introduce literature. So, in your opinion, so that's why in language teaching, literature is regarded as complementary material. So, in your opinion, can we use literature as first-hand material to teach language in our text?
Thank you, Dr. There's a debate on meta side of metacognition. But in English department at Kirtipur, what we do, we prescribe about 20 novels, a huge corpus for the students. Then they do not know, they know. There's the conscious choice of language. Well, this sentence is a defective passive. In English department, they don't whether this defective or pseudo-passive same. But still, they are using language efficiently. Because there's a huge corpus of 20 different novels, each novel in average 200 pages, so many chapters are there. In a world, imaginary world is created. And if we are teaching syntax, for example, we have James Joyce's Ulysses, 900 pages. Single sentence consists of 78 pages. And we have Samuel Beckett. There's a sentence consists of one single letter. That letter is sentence. That letter is a paragraph. So potentially, a sentence can be infinitely longer, but time and space doesn't allow us to do that. Therefore, there is a huge corpus of sentences, typological, Talme, Gibbon, all these things can be analyzed intuitively. I do not know, I know. So, some people, I do not know, I do not know. I do not know, I know. I know, I know. There's difference between I know, I know. I do not know, I know. What, knowledge begins from an awareness of ignorance, right? So, for us, at least English department, what we believe is if you offer them adequate room for adequate corpus for your pronunciation, your vocabulary, your syntax, your discourse longer than the sentence, suprasentential level, of course they can very well understand what exactly involved a sentence. If we have conscious choice of language, it often blurs the spontaneity. It is said that. This is our take in English department, and you compare a student from English education and a student from English studies, you can sense the difference, the spontaneity. This is our take. We might be wrong, but this is what we believe. So but still, I didn't have any formal training on pedagogy. But we are aware of the fact that we have pedagogical knowledge, we should have technological knowledge, we can ask questions to DeepSeek. Please make a list of 50 books on discourse studies so that all are verifiable, not imaginary, and within seconds we have 50 books on discourse studies without fail. So technological knowledge, PK, TK, CK, CK, these are the jargons used in this pedagogy. Okay. So
We help our language teachers engage his or her learners in different activities. So I would like to ask Dr. Adhikari, please.
Thank you, sir. Am I visible? If not, then at least audible. I'm here. First of all, there is a long-established assumption or this statement on literature that literature is this is what I studied in B.Ed and then in M.Ed I didn't have that, and in M.Ed I continued that literary journey, and then generally those who write literature, they are perceived differently because the person who is practicing something deviated from, and literature also conceived as a deviated form, which is wrong because it's not deviation, it's extension of everyday use of language. I think our professors are already aware of this fact. It's not deviation, it's extension. If I say a sick-looking sun sank in the western horizon, this sickness is not deviated. I'm projecting that sickness on that sun, which looks aloe, and the person who is suffering with jaundice, aloe, that aloeousness is extended, it's not deviated. And next important thing, no language is absolutely literal. Language is always metaphorical, always. No language is, whether you are talking about scientific language, whether you are talking about academic language, language is always metaphorical. It's not literal. It means that in literature, metaphorical aspect is more heightened than in non-academic language or non-literal language. That's why this should be not taken as something that we are trying. Even if it is taken as deviated form, that's fine. Talking about Wordsworth poem or Keats poem, it's fine then. If it is deviated form, we can practice in the classroom giving that sample that, okay, this is the deviated form, then what could be the so-called normal form? Let's rewrite it and then we will practice on that language, fine. Then it's something like that. Buddha said, if you don't learn anything from me, from my success, at least learn from my failure. If it is a failed attempt of a crop of people, some strange species of people practicing that form of language, then what is the common form of language that we can practice? This.
Then when Lok sir was asking about the literature in the classroom, actually I need to ask myself why I read literature when literary texts were not in my course books. Not so much. Then why I had inclination towards humanities. Not because I wanted to be familiar with Sartre or Nietzsche, nothing else that didn't matter. But what I thought was, I was suffering from a sort of linguistic deprivation in my course. Always this subject, verb, agreement, that this has very important role, no doubt. This is the map, but map is not the journey. And literature gave me that vision, that energy to work following that subject verb agreement journey. Next thing, referring to our Ramzan sir, yes, in literature also we have practicing language, here also we practice. The only thing that the distinction is blurred, but I think that there language becomes byproduct of extensive exposure to literary text. In ours, language becomes, literature becomes that means, language acquisition becomes primary goal, and literary awareness becomes the byproduct. But either way, and the distinction between these should not be absolute, they are complementary. That's why sometimes I ask my students, I tell my students, well, if you have finished masters in English education, then go for literature as well, as a supplementary. And if you are from humanities, go to education as well, so that they can go together, hand in hand. I think I might have answered, and it's a literary discussion. If rest, you have to assume yourself.
Okay, thank you very much.